The Avenger is one of the original, way back in the day, ships that went into the game. It was actually me that kind of concepted that one. I think it was in record time back then. It's funny. The original uses it was essentially like an old school police vessel back in the day that got repurposed. It was at the time it was sort of very kind of favourable to bounty hunters because of its large cargo space at the time in the back. Over time that progressed where we've got several different modules that you can plug into the rear. So you've got the cargo space, the bounty hunter space, and the EMP stuff, which is super interesting. But as with all things in the UK, we decided that the ship wasn't big enough, so we decided it needed to be scaled up. It wasn't just for the sake of doing it. Like the main reason for that is since 3.5, 4 years ago, the game's progressed an awful lot. A lot of the ship mechanics have come in that we didn't really kind of know about back then. So, for example, like the ship components have gone in, and by the time you put the ship components into what was a small ship, you've got no room to manoeuvre. And it was very tight anyway. The original Avenger had that kind of crouch space in the middle. So we wanted to get away, do away with all that, and basically make the ship easily traversable, either in gravity or in zero gravity, by expanding the middle section and kind of building that out so it can, accommodate all the components from tech design. You can sleep there, you can walk there basically, rather than having to go into this kind of crouch pose, which created all sorts of collision issues. So yeah, that's all gone now.
The changes we've been making on the Avenger have been bringing the textures and shaders up to a higher quality, adding a little bit more grunge, because it's kind of one of those workhorse ships of the UEE. It's the Advocacy's main combat vessel, and we wanted to look like it's been around a bit longer and seen a bit of action effectively. So we wanted the textures to have a little bit more grunge, things to look a little bit more worn, a little bit kind of more used effectively, and we wanted just to polish up the geometry on the ship as well, just give it a slightly cleaner aesthetic without kind of losing any of the design cues that people enjoy about that ship already. The biggest challenges with the Avenger was scaling it up whilst not kind of distorting the design in any way. You still wanted the cockpit and spaces to feel quite enclosed, but we didn't want to change the proportionality between the bounds of the cockpit and the ship itself, because it's all quite intrinsic in the proportion of the design. So a lot of that has had some rework and some back and forth, but I think we're quite happy with where it is currently.
The interior has got a lot bigger. Whilst we've done this rework, we obviously wanted to fix the component issues. We wanted to sort the middle section out so it's traversable easily. The cockpit's generally got a little bit bigger, so the camera's got a bit more room to manoeuvre in there. And we've also sorted the rear ramp out, so there's no collision issues there now, especially with the new compression system coming in, because we're finding with a lot of ships, once they compress, that whole metric that you work to kind of goes out the window, so you have to give yourself a bit more of a buffer to work with, which we've done here. So should you land quite heavy on the rear, you're still going to be able to get in that ship no problems.
The Avenger, before we ever built the interior for it, wasn't meant to have an interior in the first place. I think it was just the cockpit, and then that was kind of retrofitted, and now revisiting the ship, we felt that making it a little bit bigger and making the space inside more practical was worth the effort. So we've gone back in and we've done those changes here.
We've got the three different variants. We've got the Stalker, which has the prison pods in the back, and it's the one where you can put people in there. We've got the Titan, where it's the cargo ship, so you can put a limit. It's not got the biggest cargo capacity because it's still a fairly small ship, but you can put cargo in there. And then we also have the Warlock, which has replaced the entire back area with an EMP device. That whole kind of system came about really from the Retaliator stuff that we've done, where we started thinking about you have different versions of the ship in the game, should we say, without having to kind of going and redo the whole ship all the time. Obviously that's very kind of labour intensive and kind of it's intensive on the engine as well. So it's really about kind of swapping sections out as quickly as possible. So the EMP was, I think it was done 3 years ago now.
And it's massive, like it's the ship's main kind of weapon, shall we say. It completely replaces the whole cargo space or the bounty hunter space. Cargo space is what it is. I mean, it's just not too much more I can say about that. And then the bounty hunter, what's really interesting about that is the way that you can configure the rear of the ship. So you can have 6 of these pods, cryo-sleep pods, where you kind of chuck people in, or you can potentially have 3 on one side and then clear the other side for cargo, vice versa. So it's kind of quite customizable, which is kind of interesting.
But it's also not incapable when it comes to combat. It's a medium-sized sort of ship, so it's quite maneuverable, and it will be quite versatile when it comes to finding yourself in a combat scenario.
I think it's one of those where it'll make quite a good sort of entry-level fighter. So anyone that's just got into the game, you're quite enjoying you start a ship and you'd be like, oh, I want to move on to a bigger ship. I think the Avenger, if you don't want to spend as much as on the Gladius, say, the Avenger would be quite a good next step for you. And also, if you want a ship that can do a few things, it's like, get the Titan. It's got cargo space. So if you want to move some cargo, you've got a ship that can do a bunch of things and it's not too expensive.
I believe, obviously, yeah, there's going to be missions where you're going to have to kind of go out and capture people. Long-term solution with, obviously, within the PU now, I mean, that's definitely for Squadron. That's something that will come about. So those kind of mission types will, I imagine, turn up in the game. Like I say, I'm not a designer, so I don't want to speak for those guys. But also, I can imagine that there will be wanted signs up for various people, like real players, so if you can catch them, which makes it quite exciting and whatnot. So yeah, you'll be slinging them in the back of the Avenger or the new Hawk, I imagine. So yeah, one or the other.